Nobody noticed the night nurse when she walked into Ward C at 2:17 a.m., because hospitals teach people to look past the ones who keep the lights on while the world sleeps, and she wore that invisibility like a second uniform, pale blue scrubs loose at the shoulders, hair tied back with clinical precision, eyes calm in the way only someone who has already faced worse things than death can be. Her name badge read, Staff Nurse, Emily Carter, and to the exhausted patients and overworked interns she was just another quiet professional moving from bed to bed, checking 4 drips, adjusting oxygen masks, murmuring reassurance into the darkness. But what nobody knew, not the patients, not the doctors, not even the hospital administrators, was that Emily Carter had once led fire teams through hostile territory, had slept in the dirt with a rifle cradled against her chest, had learned to count heartbeats while bullets cracked overhead, because before she ever learned to hang saline bags, she had been an Army Ranger, trained to survive chaos, trained to fight when everything went wrong. The hospital was unusually quiet that night, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears until instinct starts whispering that silence is never accidental, and Emily felt it before anything happened, a tightening in her chest, a shift in the air, the same pre-contact awareness she used to feel seconds before an ambush. Down the hall, a security camera flickered. Somewhere below, a door opened that shouldn't have. At 2:21 a.m., the first gunshot echoed through the lower level, sharp and unmistakable, and screams followed like a wave breaking through glass. Panic spread instantly, patients cried out, nurses froze, alarms began to scream, but Emily did not panic, because panic is what you feel when you don't know what to do, and she knew exactly what to do. She moved fast, locking doors, killing lights, pulling terrified patients from their beds and pushing them into bathrooms, storage closets, behind heavy equipment, her voice low and controlled as she whispered instructions that carried the authority of someone who had once been obeyed in combat zones. When the armed gunman finally reached the ward, a man in tactical gear, rifle raised, eyes wild and unfocused, he expected chaos, easy targets, screaming victims, but what he found instead was silence, darkness, and a nurse standing calmly in the middle of the corridor, hands raised, face composed, as if she were surrendering, and in that moment he made the worst mistake of his life, because he thought he was looking at a frightened civilian, not a soldier who had ended fights before they even began. As he shouted, as he advanced, Emily tracked his movement, his breathing, the way his fingers sat too tightly on the trigger, and when he lunged, she moved with explosive speed, redirecting the rifle, driving her weight forward, using techniques burned into muscle memory through years of brutal training. The gun fired into the ceiling. The hallway erupted in echoes. They crashed into a supply cart, metal clattering, and Emily struck with precision, throat, wrist, knee, dismantling him piece by piece while patients hid in breathless terror behind locked doors, unaware that the calm night nurse was fighting for their lives. By the time security finally rushed in, weapons drawn and voices shaking, they found the gunman unconscious on the floor, weapon secured, and Emily kneeling beside him, checking his pulse, already back in nurse mode, because the mission was complete and lives had been saved. And as flashing lights filled the ward and authorities began asking questions, one truth hung in the air like a loaded weapon: nobody knew who she really was, yet. The investigation that followed peeled back layers no one expected, because when police asked Emily Carter how she managed to subdue an armed gunman alone, she simply said she acted on instinct, but instincts like hers are forged, not born, and soon the truth emerged, quietly at first, then with growing disbelief. Commendations locked in military archives, a classified service record, deployments erased from public memory. The night nurse was a decorated Army Ranger who had walked away from war not because she was broken, but because she was tired of watching good people bleed. As word spread through the hospital, reactions shifted from shock to awe. Doctors who had once hurried past her now looked at her differently, patients whispered her name with reverence, and the staff realized that while they slept, someone among them had been standing guard the whole time. But Emily didn't want recognition. She had learned long ago that glory is loud and short-lived, while service is quiet and enduring, and she planned to return to her shifts as if nothing had changed, until the gunman woke up in custody and revealed why he had chosen that hospital, why that ward mattered, and why Emily's past had unknowingly placed her exactly where she needed to be. He hadn't come for random victims, he had come for a specific patient, a former intelligence asset scheduled for transfer at dawn, a man whose survival threatened powerful interests, and without knowing it, Emily had just stopped an assassination that could have sparked consequences far beyond hospital walls. Federal agents arrived before sunrise. Files were opened. Old commanders made calls they never expected to make again. Emily was asked, not ordered, to help, just one more time, and the weight of the decision pressed on her like body armor she thought she'd removed forever. As she walked through the ward one last time before dawn, checking on patients who would never fully understand how close they had come to tragedy, she realized something simple and unshakable: she had never stopped being who she was, she had only changed the battlefield. When she finally looked out at the rising sun through the hospital windows, she knew that courage didn't belong to uniforms or titles, but to choices made in the dark, when no one is watching, and that sometimes the most dangerous warrior in the room is the one everyone overlooks. And as the world slowly learned the truth about the night nurse, one story remained clear above all others: heroes don't always announce themselves, sometimes they just show up for the night shift and save lives without asking for anything in return. The agent spoke in low voices outside the ward, words like containment, extraction, and non-attribution drifting through the glass, and Emily listened without appearing to listen, because she had learned long ago how to absorb information while seeming fully absorbed in something else, adjusting a monitor here, smoothing a blanket there, her face composed while her mind rebuilt maps it hadn't used in years. She understood the unspoken question behind every careful sentence: would she step back into the shadows if asked? Would she shoulder one more burden so others wouldn't have to? The patient the gunman had come for lay sedated 2 rooms down, breathing shallow but steady, a man who looked ordinary enough until you noticed the way even unconsciousness hadn't erased the tension from his hands, the way survival had etched itself into his posture. Emily stood at the doorway longer than necessary, memories surfacing uninvited, nights when she had guarded people just like him, assets whose lives were measured not in years but in what they knew and who wanted them silenced. A senior agent finally approached, voice respectful, almost deferential, and told her they believed there was a second team still unaccounted for, that the hospital might not be as secure as it seemed, and Emily nodded once, because fear had no place here, only decisions. She didn't ask for a weapon, she asked for floor plans, staffing lists, and the location of every stairwell and service corridor, and when she began quietly repositioning orderlies and nurses under the guise of routine checks, no one questioned her authority, because authority isn't announced, it's felt. Somewhere deep in the building, a fire door clicked softly, and Emily felt that old familiar awareness flare again, the warning that danger rarely arrives loudly the second time. She moved before the radios crackled, intercepting a lone intruder slipping through a maintenance corridor, disarming him without spectacle, pinning him long enough for agents to arrive, her movements efficient, almost gentle, because the goal was never domination, only control.